Good evening, everyone, and welcome to day 15 of our Salesforce Platform Developers Training. And tonight, we're going to be looking into LWC and SFDX. Okay? LWC stands for Lightning Web Component, and SFDX stands for Salesforce Development Experience, like driven source code driven development, meaning that you are going to be developing based on the things you know how to code, regardless of the Salesforce org. Okay? So you can work independently of the Salesforce org, but you can connect with the Salesforce org without actually having to go via the user interface. So today, it's going to be a bit different. We're going to be working with some of the tools we already know, such as Visual Studio Code, and we're going to be trying one or two things in terms of understanding how to move code around. Eventually, at the end of this session, not this session, but this segment, LWC and SFDS, we'll learn how to work with DevOps. Okay, we'll learn how to move code from one org to the other using the Bitbucket or GitHub, whatever command or whatever interface you're familiar with. Okay. Without wasting much of your time, let's go into the hands-on hug and see, okay, maybe today we might do something different, not hands-on hug. Let me open the Visual Studio Code. So first thing first, when you, can you just react if you can see my Visual Studio Code? A dark screen, not a Salesforce hug. Just react that you can see it. Okay, good. Now, yes. So what typically happens at work is you'll be given an hug, okay? And you might be the only one in that hug. Alternatively, you might be given one hug where a lot of people will be working simultaneously. Salesforce helps you manage those code. Whenever you are given an hug, you need to find out how many people are working on that hug. If you're the only one working on that hug, then you're good to go. You don't have to worry too much about overriding other people's codes and the likes. However, if you're given an hug whereby other people are also working in that hug, then you need to use what they call a scratch hug. A scratch hug is a feature branch. If you've worked with Git, you probably understand what I mean by feature branch. Let's say you have a main branch, then you create a feature branch out of the main branch. That is what a scratch org is. A scratch org is like you creating a replica of your org, but it's not necessarily a sandbox. It's not necessarily like a dedicated sandbox. It's just like, okay, I've created a copy of my sandbox into my local workspace, and I will be working on that sandbox, okay? So now, before we get into creating a scratch org, let's kind of like understand the Salesforce DX principle, the reason why we're doing the Salesforce DX. Before now, if you have your code, okay? If you have your code, let's say I have a sandbox. And I have my code, okay? And my code would be present in the sandbox. For you to move your code, you have to use what they call the change sets. And the change set is typically for consultant, not developer, okay? As you can see in Blackforce org, we have change sets. We have different orgs. The production, we have the test org, and we have the likes. Now, for you to move your code from a sandbox to the other, you need to have them connected together. For instance, we are in the QA environment. And as you can see, in the QA environment, we can move code from QA to production. And we can move code from QA to UAT, and we can move code from UAT to QA. Anytime you see this green stuff, it means that you can move code via whatever org you have. how do you go about creating that? First thing, you go to your production, the production hub. I've already done some of these items in our app builder class, but let me just kind of like go over it again so you can understand the benefits of having a SFDX, okay? I've been working via the code instead of having your change set all the time. So now, you're going to create a sandbox. They will have given you the sandbox. You don't have to create it yourself. They would have created a sandbox for you, okay? You will click on New Sandbox, and you will create a sandbox. As you can see, you have different types of sandbox you can create, but obviously, typically, you will be given a developer's sandbox because you can create as many developers sandboxes. The only difference is data, okay? The difference between developer sandbox and the full sandbox or partial copy sandbox is the data. For instance, if I create from production, I can have production data in my partial copy and a full, whereas in my developer, the only thing I have is configuration, okay? After you've created that sandbox, you can log in to that sandbox, okay? You can log into that sandbox directly from production if you have access, but if you don't have access, they will give you your username and password. More importantly, connecting. To connect this sandbox, you need to trigger the connection from here. So if I want to connect my production with training, all I just need to do is click on Edit and allow inbound changes. Allow inbound changes ensures that whenever I'm in production, I can create a change set and push that change set into production. Similarly, if I am in training org, I can connect to other orgs from training org. For instance, if I log into training org, I'll go to deployment settings. And I will look for all sandboxes connected to this org, okay? In deployment settings, you can see all sandboxes that are connected to this org. So if I want to connect my training hub with my QA, I'll click on Edit in the QA session, and I'll click on Allow Inbound Changes. So once that is connected from the training org, as you can see, you can go to QA and Edit Training, and you click on Allow Inbound Changes in QA, okay? So now you've seen how to enable changes in QA, and you've seen how to enable the changes in training. So what would happen is that you will see a green light that shows that you can connect training and QA together. Can you see? It shows both direction. Now, once you have this, the second thing you need to do is, where are you moving things from? You will create what they call an outbound. An outbound change set is a change set that is being created to move the changes you've made in your org into a different org, most likely an upper org, okay? So for instance, you can say release version, release, you have to use your dates, okay? 05/2022. And you have this change set, you had a component, and you can select whatever component you want to add, okay? This is the normal way of doing things as a consultant. However, as a developer, you have to do things more in an advanced way. The reason why you have to use an advanced tool is because developer constantly make changes to the org, and we need to track who is making those changes. That is why we have the concept of Salesforce DX. Salesforce DX helps you to track those changes, and you can push to your GitHub or your Bitbucket. Okay, so You already know how to push to GitHub. All you just need to say is how to connect your org with the VS Studio Code. So the first thing first is you will create a new window. If you haven't created a new window before, this is how a new window will look like. Then the next thing is to have your terminal ready, because the terminal is where you can have command line. Okay, you can have the command line that will help you type the things you want. Okay, so now that you have that, remember, the whole goal is to pull all the codes we have in our training into our local workspace and push that code into a version controlling tool or interface that we can use to track the changes we've made in the hub. Okay, so now that we have that, the next thing we need to do is install. We need to install the plugins that are needed to make us connect to the org. What does that mean? It means that this is just a Visual Studio Code. However, if you install what they call the Salesforce CLI, okay, if you install the Salesforce CLI, I already have it installed on my computer. If you install the Salesforce CLI, then you can work with Salesforce commands. So what does that mean? It means that you'll be able to run what they call the Sfdx commands. What are Sfdx commands? Sfdx commands are the commands that helps you to relate with your org. I want to find a list of Salesforce CLI username. I can just type in Sfdx alias, and I should be able to get a list of the orgs that are present on this computer. Okay, if I want to type, I want to find out, I want to create something. I want to create a new project. All I just need to do, type in Sfdx create. But remember, you have to install that plugin. If you don't have that plugin installed, you will not be able to create or run the Sfdx command. So aside the Sfdx command, you can also run that command using the interface, such as using your keyboard. For instance, if you're on a Mac, you can press Shift Command P. Shift Command P is equivalent of what Sfdx you want to run. It's just that you don't have to be looking for it the way I type it here, but you can just click on it the way you have it here. Okay? For instance, if I want to create a new project, I call Sfdx create project with manifest. However, we could run what they call Sfdx, okay, first, and a project, okay? Then create. Then you give it a name. Maybe name should be sample project, okay? That is a command, but you're not expected to run command. You're not expected to run command if you don't know the syntax to use to run that command. However, if you type in on your keyboard Shift Command P, it will bring up all those Sfdx commands, and you can even see some of the commands you've used before. Okay, so now to create a new project, instead of me typing the Sfdx create, I'll just click on create project with manifest. Creating project with manifest is like you creating a brand new Salesforce org. However, it's not connected to any Salesforce org. It's like a default Salesforce org. And you can select standard. Then you give it a name. Blackforce training. It's just an alias that would help you to identify the org you've just created. And you can put it into, let's say, any folder, such as this. Once you've created that project, you will see that you would have the structure of the Salesforce org. It is not connected to any Salesforce org. However, it's going to give you the structure of any Salesforce project you ever carry out. The first app is where the Salesforce applications are, such as your classes, your pages, whatever it is, layouts, permission sets, tabs, triggers, objects, everything you have in your Salesforce org is present in the first app. Okay? One thing you realize is that there is nothing there. Why is it that there is nothing there? Because this is just a structure. Remember, we created a project with Manifest. Manifest gives us a structure for our projects. The next thing we need to do is we need to connect. Okay? We need to connect our org, our Manifest project, which we just created, with a live org. Okay? You select Sandbox if you want to connect to a Sandbox. And you select Production if you want to connect to a production org. But obviously, if you're a developer, you should be connecting to a Sandbox. Then it gives you opportunity to type in alias. The alias is a way to identify this org. Previously, when you run that, it's going to give you something like this. Okay, a new window will pop up and it's going to give you something like this. And you have to type in your username and password. But before we get here, I told you about alias, right? Alias is just a way to identify. Okay, let me cancel this again, and I will type in the same thing. Authorize org, then test, then I'm going to give an alias, right? So as you can see, whatever we're doing is automatically opening up a window for us to log in. But more importantly, check this output terminal and see what is happening there. We could have done whatever we just did with SFDS, Force Auth Web Login, but no one remembers all this stuff. No one remembers it. Don't even memorize it. You just press Shift Command P on your local computer if you're using Mac, and I think if you're using Windows, it's Control Shift P. Okay, if you're using Windows, Control Shift P, but if you're using Mac, it's Shift Command P. Now, if you press that, this stuff will come up. Then you have to log in using your username and password. Okay? You log in using your username and password. Once you log in using your username and password, so it's asking you to verify this code because I've never used this Windows to log in before, right? So it's telling me that they've sent some code into my mail and I should verify it, okay? I'm just checking my email to see that code, and you will see that the code has been sent, and I will verify that. Okay, once I verify, and I will now allow Salesforce CLI. Okay, I'll allow Salesforce CLI to use my credentials to communicate with my training hub. That is what we've just done. We've just authorized the Visual Studio Code with our Salesforce org. And what does that mean? It means that anything we do here, okay, anything we do here would be connected, okay? Would be connected. And if you see, you will see that it says successfully authorized Blackforce training with this username, with this org, okay? And if you want to go to the org, you know that if you go to company setup, company information, you'll be able to see the org you have just connected to, okay? So that is how you would know. The org ID for Blackforce training it should be, this is organization ID. The org ID should be something like this. But, with Salesforce, you have 15 character and you have the 18 characters, okay? It's just that the last 3 characters is taken off, but this is the org ID, okay? So now, you've successfully connected your Visual Studio Code with your Salesforce org. So what is next? What is next is to retrieve. You want to retrieve everything in your org into your local workspace so you can start working. How do you retrieve everything in your org into your local workspace? You can retrieve everything in your org into your local workspace by going to Manifest, and you will see what package.xml. The package.xml is a way to retrieve everything you have in your Sandbox org or anywhere, not just Sandbox. It could be production, it could be anything. Everything you have in that org, you can bring it locally and start working. It's equivalent to you doing a Git pull when you're given a task at work. The first thing you want to do is you do a Git pull that pulls all the codes, changes that have been made from other developers into your local workspace. You create a branch, you make your changes, then you push back to the Git and you create a pull request. I believe Samuel taught you all this stuff during your introduction to programming, okay? The expectations are you should be able to do that. Now, you have this. We want to retrieve all the files in the system. What do I need to do? I need to go to Salesforce package.xml, and you can get a full version of everything according to what you are looking for. For instance, if I want to retrieve the account objects, this is what I need to put. Retrieve the account objects. If I want to retrieve a custom object, this is what I need to do. However, I need to put the name of the custom object here. If you do not want to retrieve one custom object, you can put an asterisk here, and it's going to retrieve all the custom objects you have created in your org. If you want to retrieve whatever it is, custom field, put it as type name custom field. Members is a custom field that you want to retrieve. But if you want to retrieve all the custom fields, replace this with an asterisk. Okay? This is how to retrieve everything. This is what some people spend time on. Because how would you know the changes that have been made? How would you know the member types? How would you know what to retrieve? What I typically do for every project is I will go to, I have a code source, okay? This is a very, very good and comprehensive package.xml. I'll just copy everything here. Go back to my Visual Studio Code, and I'll just replace it. This is what I typically do when I have a new project. So now it's going to retrieve my workflow. It's going to retrieve transaction security, topics for objects, whatever it is I have in my org. Profile settings, queue. So now, if I ask you to retrieve something, you already know what the name is. If you don't know what the name is, Google it and just type package.xml name for permission sets. And you're going to get the XML for permission sets. You see, this is the name, permission sets. This is the members. The members is the permission set you want to retrieve. For instance, if you have created a permission set in your org and you know the name, for instance, CRM users, okay? CRM user, instead of putting asterisks in the CRM user, in the permission set, I'll just put CRM user API. So it's going to be retrieving CRM user API permission set only. However, if you want to retrieve everything, then you put asterisks. As you can see, I have put asterisks in everything, meaning that I want to retrieve everything I have in the org. I save. Once I save, I go back to my manifest. I right-click on the package.xml, right-click, and click on Retrieve Source in Manifest org. You will see to your right that something is being retrieved and is being loaded. Sometimes for the first time, it can take some time, okay? Remember, it is being retrieved. It is retrieving everything you have in your training org. And once you see that it has been retrieved successfully, you can go back to your applications and you will see all the applications you have. Go back to your classes. You see that there are no classes present. Go back to your layout, see all the layouts you have. Go back to whatever it is, and you will see everything you have created. Remember, this is everything in your org. Now, let's go and create a simple class in our org. Remember, you can also do this with a sandbox, okay? You don't have to use a live org. You can do it with a sandbox. So I want to create sample class. Okay, this is a sample class. I save. So we have sample class in our org. Now, save. Retrieve source. It's going to take a bit of time, but it's going to retrieve the sample class we have just created. Why can we do this? How are we able to do this? We can do this because we have connected our org with our local workspace. So now you don't need to go to Salesforce to go and code. You don't need to go to the Salesforce to go and code. You don't need to go to Developer Console to code. You can code right from your local computer. Once you're done, you need to push your code. How do you push your code? You right-click and you click on Deploy this to org. Or you go to Classes, you right-click and you deploy source to org. Okay, so you've seen different ways which you can retrieve, you can push, and if you go to this place, you open your sample class again, you will see the changes you've made locally. This is how you can create a trace of all changes you've made. So if you're in the work experience projects, maybe you should try this as well instead of using change sets, but let's start with change set for now. But if you want to go advanced in your project, so you want to work, remotely and make sure that you guys have the same org, you can just try this for your learning sake. So you don't have to constantly be logging into the Salesforce org. Connect your org locally and work. Whatever you do here can be pushed back into the org you're working with, okay? So now you've seen a very simple way of connecting, but there is more to this. This is the whole objective of this is to be able to connect and to be able to do stuff. For instance, I can write my Apex code. How can I create a new class? If I click on Create Apex Class, New Sample Class, I press Enter, it will come with the structure of the Apex class And it will also come with what they call the meta.xml. Meta.xml is the metadata responsible for this class. Remember, everything in Salesforce is metadata, data of data. This is how Salesforce knows that you have a class called new sample class. And this class status is active. The API version is this, okay? That is how Salesforce deploy this class or move this class around different org. Okay, so now you've seen how to create a new class, but it is not only new class you can create like this. You can also create what they call a Lightning Web component. All you just need to do is go to the folder of the things you want to create. You want to create a trigger? Go to the trigger folder and create a new Apex trigger. Okay, for you to create a new Apex trigger, you just create it and change this S object to account. That's how you create a new Apex trigger. But obviously, this is just giving you like a very, simple way of creating a trigger, right? You can also go to developer console to create a trigger. But the bottom line is, whatever you create, you can deploy individually like this, or you can go to the top folder and click on deploy. So you're going to deploy all the classes. Okay? So you deploy all the classes, and if you want to deploy the entire org back to the org, you can click on this, but sometimes this will fail. Okay? Sometimes this will fail. So it's better for you to, because there might be some dependencies. So it's better for you to deploy based on the order of dependencies. Okay? So remember, you can connect your Visual Studio Code to the Salesforce org. The first thing you need to do is download or install the Salesforce CLI. And once you install the Salesforce CLI, using your keyboard command, Shift Command P, you can create a new project. And using the same keyboard shortcut, you can select Authorize an org to connect to your org. After that, whatever you have in your Salesforce org can be retrieved using the package.xml. The package.xml is not something you need to memorize. You just need to know what you are trying to retrieve. After that, you can click on right-click and select Retrieve to retrieve everything inside the package.xml. Okay? Or you can click on Deploy to deploy everything in your package.xml. So now, what is the purpose of this and why are we doing this? The first thing I said is it gives us a way to track all the changes we've made to the org. For instance, if you have retrieved this, what you need to do, git init, and you set up your Git account, okay? Git config and the likes. You set up the Git account and you push this to a source or version control tools that you've learned in your introduction to programming. We use Bitbucket at Blackforce, but you can use GitHub, you can use anything. Once you push it there, we have what they call the initial deployment, the initial build, the initial deployment of your org. Remember, your Bitbucket is not connected to your org. It is only your local workspace that is connected to your org. Your Bitbucket is connected to your local workspace. Your local workspace is connected to your org. To build the connection of Bitbucket to your org is the process we refer to as a DevOps process. The DevOps process is a strategy you implement in your work such that anytime you push to your Bitbucket local workspace, it automatically runs a pipeline. And that pipeline would build into your org. The process is different. We're going to touch that next month. I think Tony will be teaching you that. And you guys will see how to create a very simple DevOps process just to deploy a code from your Bitbucket to your org. But for tonight, we need to do something basic. What is the something basic we want to do? We want to learn about LWC. The reason why we had to use this for LWC is because there is no other way to create LWC from our Salesforce org. As you can see, we have Lightning components. What is Lightning component? Lightning component is just a simple component that lets you, build applications using JavaScript, HTMLs, and the likes. However, you don't get to do the fancy stuff. Once you create a Lightning component, you'll be given what I call a component, a controller, helper, style, documentation, render, designer. As you can see, just one thing that you want to do. You've been given all these components that constitute to your simple components, which is very difficult to manage. This is the old version or the older way you build applications with JavaScript. But Salesforce is saying, okay, don't let us build application with JavaScript using Lightning components. Let's use Lightning Web Components. Why Lightning Web Components? It gives you the opportunity to use the things you're already familiar with. What are the things you're already familiar with? You know that if you want to build using JavaScript, your get elements, ID, and all those kind of stuff, you know how to retrieve event data. Those are the things you're familiar with. And that is the reason why I said you should learn those stuff, because Lightning Web Component will become easier for you to work with. So now, this is a session of Lightning Web Components. We currently do not have any Lightning Web Components, but we can create a simple Lightning Web Component by just creating Lightning Web Components. And we give it a file name, sample LWC. When you create a Lightning Web Component, just like when you create a new class, you'll be given some structure. But more importantly, you should go into the sample LWC and see what the LWC is made up of, okay? You want to see the components of the LWC. Compared to the Lightning component, you have all these components, okay? Which is controller, helper, style, documentation, renderer, and stuff. All this stuff is very hard to manage. It's even very hard to code. I don't know how to code using Lightning component because this is the older version. This is the older way of doing things in Salesforce. However, with the new Lightning Web Component, you don't need to manage all those stuffs. All those stuffs are just too much for you to create a simple component. So Salesforce is saying, ignore those stuffs. All you need is HTML and JavaScript. So whatever you know in JavaScript is valid. The this, dots, blah, blah, blah is valid in Lightning Web Component. So you don't need to know renderer, you don't need to know Aura component, you don't need to know all those stuff before you can create a very good component in Salesforce. Now, I've said component almost like, I wouldn't say a million times, but I've said it several times. And some of you will be wondering, what exactly is a Lightning Web Component? What exactly are components? If I go to my account, I probably don't have any accounts. I don't have leads either. Because this is obviously, this is a QA. Well, let's go to training. This is a training, but yet I don't think I have it. But we can just quickly create it, okay? Let's quickly create an account. So if you have this account, for instance, and I go to edit page, this is the components, the standard components that comes with your Salesforce by default. And you can see you have what they call the what? You have what they call the custom components. Custom components are the components you create. If you have LWC, you would see LWC here. How would you see it here? First thing is you do whatever you want to do. Then you deploy the LWC that you created. You deploy it into the source org. Okay? You deploy it into the source org, and you'll be able to see that in your components. So let's refresh this. And let's so before you can see the custom component, you need to do one thing. First thing first, you want to make sure that the XML that you are deploying is reflecting where you want to use the components. This is very important. As you can see, we don't have anything here. That means we cannot use our component in Lightning app page. We can't even use our components in Lightning details page because we have not indicated or we have not asked Salesforce to show the Lightning component here. So how do we ensure that our Lightning component is showing in the custom place as well as the page and everything? You can just quickly make a quick research into metadata, meta XML record page LWC. You don't have to make this research. It's something that should come by default, but you want to see how to reference the metadata. Okay, I want to see the metadata for record page. So it says we have to say targets to be record page, target to be app page, target to be home page. What that means is that instead of having this plain XML for my sample LWC, I need to improve my LWC such that I can include it in the places or in the places where I want it to show. Okay, so let's copy this and include it in here. So we've created a very simple target for our LWC. More importantly, you want to deploy this, okay? If you don't deploy this, again, it wouldn't show, right? So you need to deploy it, and if you get any error, you can fix the error. So you've seen that by placing a target, you can determine where you want your custom LWC to show. Let's refresh this again and see if it shows on our record page. You know, this is a record page. Let's go to home page for a start. Edit. Okay, it's not coming up. Let me see. This was deployed successfully. This is Black Force training. Expose true. Okay. Again, you don't need to know all these commands. You just need to copy an existing code. Okay, I'll show you where to get an existing code for all this stuff. Expose true and making sure that you deploy the sample LWC. We know that it's in record page, app page, home page. Let's test it again. Refresh. Okay, now you can see the sample LWC. What have we done? The first thing we've done is this. We right-click on LWC. We click on Create Lightning Web Component. When we created the Lightning Web Component, we're given 3 files. The HTML that gives us the privilege of typing anything. Like we are building our simple HTML pages. Okay, I'll still show you how to do whatever we've done in Visualforce page in our LWC, okay? Save. So now you have this simple stuff. Let me deploy it again. We're given HTML. Then we're given JavaScript that helps us to manipulate things. If at all we want to manipulate things, I will show you how to manipulate things. But for now, let's ignore the JavaScript. Then we're given XML. XML is just the metadata that helps Salesforce to know, number one, if we want to expose this Lightning Web Component outside of this place. Number two, where do we want to have this Lightning Web Component? Record page, app page, home page. Okay. Once we have that, then we can see that Lightning Web Component in this custom component. Remember, everything here is components, but we have the standard and we have the custom. Okay. If you drag the custom here, you will now see that gives us the privilege to type anything, which was the HTML we put here. Now, you might want to style this. How do you style it? You will create a style sheet, okay, a .css file using the same name, okay? It has to be the same name as the Lightning component, and it needs to end in .css, okay? So now that we have created a style sheet, I can just say .p, then color blue, okay? Salesforce Visualforce Studio Code interface automatically completes certain things and it just helps you, right? That's one of the benefits of using Visual Studio Code. Again, we can do the size, font size, 22 pixel, and you can do line height or whatever it is you want to do, right? 10 pixel, okay? Then, more importantly, make sure you deploy. If you don't deploy the changes you've made, you will not see them in your front end, okay? So activate. Refresh. So this is a test that we have, right? But do we need to put .p for paragraph? Because P is, I think, a default tag, right? If it's not a default tag, then you can use that, okay? I wrap it around P, 2 I want to test something. Sample LWC.css. I just want to test something, okay? Custom style. Sometimes it doesn't appear immediately. I don't think it's going to show because you have to log in. You have to log in, yeah. Sometimes it won't appear immediately, but let's check that. Let's check this again. I believe it should appear. So it's just we trying to use the style sheet to manipulate what we have in our test, okay? So remember, the Lightning component can be put here. It can also be put on a community page. Okay, I'm going to show you how to create a community page tonight and how you can use your Lightning component in your community page. But remember, Lightning component can also be an action button for the object of interest, meaning that I can go and create a button and say Lightning web component. The same thing we can do for the Visual Studio. You can also do it for this. Okay, so for you to use the Lightning web component, you need to kind of like ensure that you can carry out some actions on the object. If you don't have any action on the object, then you cannot use that. But again, remember, you can expose the Lightning web component to the action button and you can use it. All you need to do is make sure that you expose it to the targets. Okay, so now let's see how to work with JavaScript. You have seen how to work with HTML by just using the P tag. You can work with HTML. So let's see a JavaScript. Let's see JavaScript. This is the JavaScript for the sample LWC we created. The first thing first is this, import. I'm pretty sure by now you guys know what import is based on your introduction to JavaScript. Import is technically saying I have what Salesforce referred to as LWC module. And I want to grab Lightning elements from the LWC module that exists in the Salesforce framework. So import Lightning elements from LWC is technically saying I want to use Lightning elements in my code. However, in order for me to use it, I want to get it from the LWC. This one is saying export default class sample LWC extends Lightning elements. First, export default, meaning that everything I'm going to write here, export it out. Make it available to the HTML. Okay? Make it available to the HTML. It's equivalent of you writing head and putting script here in your this thing, okay? In your normal HTML and CSS. That's equivalent. You putting JavaScript here. So now, class, the name of the Lightning web components you have just created, extends Lightning element, meaning that everything that we know in Lightning element that we cannot even see, extend it. That means I can use some of the things present in Lightning element that I have already imported. I can use it without defining those things here. Okay? So now let's just kind of like create a very simple variable called message. And we give it a value called hello world. Save. Okay? We've created a very simple variable called message, and we've given it a value called hello world. That means message will be available in our HTML, the front end. So in programming terms, this is like a controller, right? And this is like the view, the front end, what you get to see. Okay? So now I want to use message in my front end. I can just say message. The same thing we've been doing, just syntax. That is the only thing. Just the syntax that you need to know. Once you know the syntax, you are good. How do you grab a variable into your front end? You just type in message. That is the name of the variable you want to grab. Okay, now let's deploy this. You click on deploy. Remember, I'm deploying from the folder. I'm deploying from the folder. I'm not deploying individually, but I can also deploy individually if I've only made changes to the HTML or the JavaScript. But ideally, just deploy from the folder because it's going to deploy everything inside that folder. Okay? I go to my front end where this is placed, refresh. Okay? This is hello world. I told you that the blue line will come up, right? This is the blue stuff coming up for the style. But more importantly, the message is now coming up. As you can see, think about what you've learned since the beginning of this training. That is what you've learned. JavaScript connecting with HTML and you designing stuff. That means what does that tell you? It tells you that you can take off everything here. Can take off everything here and just work completely with Lightning Web Components. This is an alternative way of using the Visualforce pages. If you don't like the Visualforce pages, use Lightning Web Component. The same concept, but different approach based on your level of confidence and your level of experience, interest, whatever it is. Okay? So now that you have Hello World, we can do more than that, right? We can do more than that. What can we do? We can create more variables. What are the variables we can create? We can create, first name, last name. Remember, every time you create something, you end it with the semicolon, right? Don't end it with the semicolon, then obviously, the repercussion, right, is going to break your code, okay? So we have last name, can have email, and you can have phone. So what does that tell me? It tells me that I can have those items right in my front end, right? First name, last name, email, and the phone. Then I can deploy this into the org. Then I can refresh. Sometimes it doesn't kick off immediately, but eventually it will kick off. So you have to be a bit patient, okay? As long as you see that this is successfully deployed, you know definitely that your changes have been deployed, okay? So you just need to be a bit patient for it because it's like connecting, right? So you see all your stuff. So what is even more interesting? What is more interesting is that you can now start writing your if-else. You can retrieve data. You can retrieve data from your objects, find out what values are present in the data, and start writing if-else statements based on the values, and you can start building a very simple application. Okay, so let's kind of like see an example of what I'm referring to. You have this, but now let's take it off. Before we take it off, let's make a mistake. Okay, I use phone 2, right? And I click on deploy. It deploys successfully, okay? But we don't have phone 2, right? what's going to happen in the front end? The value of phone is just lost, right? But let's see if we have phone two here, but we take off phone 2 here, okay? I want to simulate a failed this thing. I'll take off the semicolon. Give me 1 minute. Let me see if I'm taking out the semicolon. It should fail because it's going to tell me that found 0 issue. Let me create something here. Sample variable equals okay. So we've seen successful deployments all the time, which is fine. But not all deployments will be successful. If your deployment is not successful, you will get this stuff, and you can go to problems and you'll be able to see the reason why your deployment is not successful. Okay, so as you can see, it's saying it's expected this, but I know that that's not what he's expecting, because if I put it here, it's still going to fail. Okay, so it's actually meant to be you close this, which doesn't have any effect, but more importantly, you have a variable equal to something. Okay, because a variable needs to be equal to something, otherwise it's going to fail. Okay, so now you've seen the failure. So expect to see failure if you're trying this in your spare time. Now that we have that, let's do something more engaging. What do I mean by that? Let's interact. You know, JavaScript is all about interaction with the user, getting what we have and displaying those information in the front end. Okay, so now in terms of interaction, what can we do with interaction? We can collect a variable from the user, and we can display that variable. Before we collect, let's say we have message, which is hello world. Okay, we have this variable, and in the front end, we can display message like this. Okay, so we know that this makes sense. However, what if we want to change the value of message, but we want a user to change that value for us? We don't want to change it by ourselves. We want a user to change that value for us. So what do you need to use? You need to use what they call the inputs. What is the input elements? In Lightning Web Components, you have what they call the inputs. Just like in Apex, we have input field. In Lightning Components, you have what they call the Lightning input field. The Lightning input field is a way to collect information from the user. And based on that information, you can manipulate and you can present information back to the user. Okay, so I'm just going to copy the Lightning input field, which is this, and I'm going to paste it here. Okay, and I'm going to close this. I expect it to be Lightning. Oh, it was a close this thing, so it's meant to be. Okay. Okay, so now we've closed this. What we can do now is we can say, I want to communicate with the user. Okay, so what do you need to put here? You just need to put, remember, you don't need to put anything here. You don't need to put anything here. For Lightning input, all you just need to put is attributes. Attributes. And what are the attributes? Attributes are label. You can have label in your Lightning input field. You can have variants. Variants is for buttons, but you don't need it. You can have other things in your Lightning input field. But let's start with just label. Label should be message test. No, message test. That's fine. Okay. Label is message test. What else can you put? You can have value, just like we have in HTML. So these stuffs are not made up stuff. They are things that we already know. They are things that we already know in HTML, but we are doing it from a Lightning point of view. Okay? So we have the label. We also have what they call the value. So what will be the value? The value will be message, because I want to change this message. I want to change it. Anytime user type in something in the input field, I want that message to appear. So I am binding that message to the value. And remember, this is message, okay? Save. But there's one other thing we need to do when it comes to JavaScript. How do you communicate your HTML with JavaScript? To communicate your HTML with JavaScript, you need to listen to events. You all know this in JavaScript. You all know the event listener in JavaScript. We're taught all this, okay? So I wouldn't go through all this stuff with you. You already know what this stuff is doing, and you already know the implication of this stuff, okay? So I'll go here and I'll just say, I want to add what they call onChange. OnChange events will be listening to this input field, and it's going to be looking at when the input field value, which is message, is changing. And is going to make those changes based on the new value you're entering into the system. But this is a JavaScript that is controlling it, okay? So I need to kind of like give this JavaScript name so I can go to the back end to code the changes or the actions I want this JavaScript or this event to carry out whenever the input field is changed. So I can just say onChange handler. So onChange handler is the JavaScript I want to write such that anytime the input field is changing, whatever I want will be done according to the JavaScript code I have written, okay? For it to make sense, you have to actually see it working. For instance, I can just say, okay, onChange events, go back and copy this, okay? So onChange handler is the JavaScript I want to write. Inside here is the manipulation or whatever it is I want to carry out if the input changes, okay? So onChange event is what is listening, and in my JavaScript, what do I want to happen when onChange is triggered? OnChange has what they call an event, okay? An event is what is containing, what is carrying all the actions I'm doing. So if I go to my Salesforce and I have this or I select this, this is an event, okay? This is an event. I selected this is an event. I click something is on click. Okay? On click is different from on change. On change is different from on mouse over. So the different kind of events, right? We're only using on change event for now. So now going back to my JavaScript, I'm saying this dot message. Remember, I told you what this dot is. That instance of message, I want it to change to what? Anything. Let's start with anything. Okay? I want it to change to anything. Then I deploy this code. I go to my Salesforce. Okay? It says hello world. Okay? We need to have an input. Is this lightning input field or lightning input? Let me see. Lightning input. Let's just try lightning input for now. Because input field, I think just displayed a test. Inputs, let's try input, then we'll try, we see if there's any mistake. This is the message. This is the input field. Let's put a break here so we can see the difference between the message. You know, the default message is hello world, right? Which is fine. But I want to see these lightning inputs, okay? Then I refresh this. Okay, so can you see message test, okay? Hello world. Now I want to change it. It's not seeing the changes. We're not taking, let me see, message, which is this, on change handler. Okay. On change handler. On change handler. This message, am I tracking this? Just give me 1 minute. I want to see why it's not reflecting. It's meant to actually reflect. Are we changing? Okay, we're not changing that. It's meant to be typing. Okay, we need to grab the event dot details dot value. Let's see that, because that one is not typing, so it's not seeing anything. It's not seeing we're not using what is being changed. So this message is now replacing our message, and HTML, which is here, is being replaced. Okay, so let's try this again. Deploy. Refresh. I want to change this. Again, it's meant to be changing. Message. This dot message is meant to be changing based on, because now we are overriding what we have in message. Okay. And I'm expecting it to change on change. Let me see if we've missed anything. Input field. Just 1 minute. Let me say on change events. On change events, LWC. I want to use the official Salesforce LWC. So on change, undo change. Just give me 1 minute. On change, undo change is this, but I want the undo change to be changing. So my initial value, this, my value, initial value, undo change, on change, console dots. I don't want to console it. Okay. I don't want to console it, but let's console it and see. Let's console it to see if things are happening. Okay. Refresh. Go to your developer tool to see what is in the console, okay? This is how you debug, okay? You want to, it's not even changing. Let me see, event target, not details. Deploy. Refresh this. Okay, we're in the console. Is the JavaScript working on this computer? It's meant to work, but I think the JavaScript is just not working on the computer, which is strange. Let me see. Do I miss anything? Okay, it appears the JavaScript is broken on this computer. Maybe it's this org. Claire. On change handler event. Let me see a simple stuff here. Target of value, trim. That's fine. My initial value. Okay, let's carry on. Let's carry on. Let's see if we can do something else. I will copy this again. Let me see if I can put a button there. Okay, a button would just kind of like let us know that we're done, right? A button will trigger an event, definitely. So let's just see how to just kind of like, we can just put a simple button that will trigger the event. Okay, so let's go to the Lightning Web Component and let's see a simple button triggered. Is there any button here? There's no button here. Okay. I'm surprised that stuff is not actually changing, okay? But it's meant to. It's just not working. But let's see another example, okay? The example is very simple. We want to, instead of having this change event, which obviously should work, but it's not working, we want to be able to see how we can just use an object in Lightning Web Component. You know, we have the message, which is fine. And previously, we have this name like this, the first name. Okay, we have the last name and the likes, okay? But what we could also do is we can wrap whatever we have right now into what you already know, which is an object. So an object would have what we call the key and value pair, okay? But before we go into that, someone has their hands raised. Let me quickly address that. Enoch, do you want to speak, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I think on the .html sample, yeah, I think the unchanged should be an attribute in the Lightning input.
Oh, was it not? Was it
no,
not?
It's not.
Oh, that was our mistake. Okay, that was our mistake. I think that's I I actually said this several times that you shouldn't put anything here. I don't know why I put something there. Let's try that. I was not even seeing the color change, and you would have seen that when it's here, the color change is different from when it is here. You see, the color change is a bit different. Okay, so let's take this off for a minute and deploy. Did we miss any other thing? Okay, take this off for a minute. Okay, comments, deploy. Okay, so I think this should work. Thanks, Enobo, because I was not even seeing any stuff, which was a bit strange. Okay, so let's take sometimes it can take some time, but more importantly, we know that this message should not be getting the value from the event, and this is now within the input. Okay, so don't let us spend too much time on this, but definitely this is just the basic JavaScript stuff, and I expect it to work. Okay, so yeah, that's it. And even in the console log is showing as well. Okay, so I was going to see the console log to find out what is there, but more importantly is what we're typing that is being shown in the message. And the only reason why that is being changing is because the message we're binding here is the same thing as the message we're binding here. Okay, so that's the mistake we made was we put this an attribute of the Lightning inputs outside of that. So this doesn't really make sense in reality. This doesn't make sense. I just didn't realize that. Okay. Thanks, Enobog, for pointing that out. And that was what I wanted to demonstrate, connecting whatever we have with the user, and whatever the user is typing, you can be getting it here. What that also means is that I can run arithmetic operation. So for instance, I can call this an input field A, another input field B, and the addition of A and B would give me a result C. But obviously, that is business use case. For instance, business can tell you to calculate the tax, or whenever someone is adding something into cart, you can calculate the tax immediately after you have added something into the cart. Okay, that is a very simple use case of that. So let's go into what I was going to show you. I was going to show you that you can also group things into an object, meaning that instead of you getting first name, last name, just like a variable, you can create those first name, last name as an object, and you can create one contact as an object, and you can now put all those values you want inside the contact. Then you can grab this contact and you can say, okay, I want contact dot first name. Everything you have learned in JavaScript is still valid. Okay? Contact dot first name, contact dot last name. You can do this as well. What is the benefit of this, or the benefit of doing this? The benefit of doing this is that in future, contact could be a data you retrieve from your objects. So you can write an Apex class that will retrieve data from these objects. And based on that data retrieved, you can now look through that data to find out the contacts present in that data. In addition to that, you can also write a check. You can write a check. So instead of you coding this immediately or displaying the record immediately, chances are the record might not exist. Contact might not have anything. So what you want to do is you want to run a check that says if true or if false, meaning that if true, okay? And obviously you don't have contact size and the likes, but what you can do here is you can go to your JavaScript and say contact size, okay? What should contact size return? Return whatever, true. If contact dot size is greater than 0. Okay, if contact dot size is greater than 0, then return true. Otherwise, return false, right? So this is everything you already know, but you're just creating a program out of it. So basically, you're using everything you know in your previous understanding of JavaScript, and you are trying to create something out of it. So basically, I've created what they call contact size. I can just go here and just manipulate the value of contact size. So if true, contact size. If true, what is true? Contact dot size is greater than 0. Then you can now display the contact information. But if it is not true, it wouldn't display it. Do you get what I mean? It wouldn't display it in the front end. Okay? So that's how to get simple stuff from the JavaScripts and using that simple stuff in your HTML to create nice stuff. But that's not what Lightning Component is all about. There is more to Lightning Components than what I'm showing you. Let me show you a very good use case of connecting your Lightning component with your Apex class and then displaying results in your HTML. For you to do that, or for us to do that, I would like to direct you to Lwc recipes. This is the official Salesforce GitHub for sample Lightning web components you can use in your workplace. So if they ask you to do something, or you can even study the things in these recipes, and you can see how to create and connect your Lightning web components to your Salesforce data, to your JavaScript locally, and deploy those things in whatever environment you want. For instance, let's see an example of how to display contacts from the Salesforce org using Lightning web components. Go to the Salesforce recipes, go to classes, and see a very simple example of contact controller. What is contact controller? Contact controller is writing a very simple Apex. So I'll copy all this. Okay, I'll copy all this and I will go to my Lightning components and create a new class, contact controller. Okay, so the contact controller would have everything, contact controller, right? With sharing, meaning that you need to have access to contact objects before you can use it. Without sharing, meaning that you don't necessarily need to have access to contact objects before getting data from the contact objects, okay? So now you already know what this is doing. This is getting contact list, and it is running a select query on the contact object. The only difference is it is putting a where clause called picture, but I don't think we have picture on contact. I don't know if Salesforce has it. Let's try to see if we have it. If we don't have it, we just disable it. With security enforce is ensuring that only those that have read access would be able to get contact list. Only those that have update access will be able to update contacts, but with security enforce is making sure that it is not opening up the Apex class, that the Apex method you've written. It is only giving it to those that have the permission to carry out that activity, okay? As you can see, we also have find contacts. We also have get single contacts. We also have update contacts. More importantly, you have the input parameters required for you to call this method. You know what the public static void means, meaning that you're not expecting anything in return after operating or after sending the request. Insufficient permission access is because the contact is not allowed to, or the user is not allowed to update contact because you're making a check called is updatable, meaning that if this user cannot update contact, then we should throw this error message. But that would only work if you've enabled with sharing, okay? So with sharing, just make sure that the only user that can update contacts are the users that have permission to update contacts, okay? So now we've just grabbed a very simple controller. Let's go back to the recipe and go to LWC and see maybe how to use any of this controller in our LWC. So get contact list, for instance. Get contact list is calling the contact controller, and it's calling the method called get contact list. If you go to, this is find contacts, get contact list. So we've written a method called get contact list, and the method would get us all the contacts in the system. The LWC to use to get contact list is this LWC. I'm going to copy all this LWC right now. And I'm going to go to my LWC section in my local workspace. And I will create a simple get all contacts. Okay? It's just a simple get all contact LWC I've created. Instead of using this, I will just copy everything in here. And I will paste it in my own previously created LWC. But remember, we already have this. I'm just going to take it off. So all we need is this, okay? Again, as you can see, I don't have to memorize anything here. Everything I'm using is provided by Salesforce. All I just need to know is a syntax and how to get an example code, because I could have written everything by myself, but it could have taken more time to just write a very simple thing someone has already done before. All you just need to do is look for an example of the things you're trying to do, get an example code, and walk your way through that thing. So let me walk you through this code. First of all, we have created a contact controller. A contact controller is just a controller we created based on our Apex understanding. Aura enabled, catchable true, meaning that it can be used by Lightning components, Lightning Web component. If you do not have @Aura enabled on your method, the Lightning Web component will not be able to retrieve that method. So for all your Apex controller that needs to be exposed to a Lightning Web component, you need to have @Aura enabled. Okay? Now, you've written a method, and the method will return what? A list of contacts. The method will return a list of contacts, and this is the name of the method. Return this query. So you could have written this query by just saying, okay, I want to initiate contact lists. So you could have just done something like this as well. Okay, get contact equals select ID from contact, right? Then you return get contact. You know, this is also the same thing. Like you can just copy all this query here and put it here, right? And you return the contact. But instead of doing 2 lines of operations, they've just done just 1 line return, and it's going to return that list. So you don't need to initialize a contact. You don't need to do 2 steps. You've only done 1 step, okay? So now I'm going to deploy this contact controller. Remember, I've explained all this stuff to you guys. You know what this is returning, okay? It says deployment fail. Check why it is failing. It is failing because it's not telling you why it's failing, okay? It's not telling you why it's failing. But what you can also do is you can change the log level. The log level can tell you more. Lwc trace terminal. So again, when you deploy, you might not see the reason why certain things fail. However, if you include trace, okay, because it's a command line, if you include trace in your log level, you should be able to see something that would help you, right? So I'm going to copy that again, go to my terminal, then I will include trace instead of fatal. So it can tell me more about why my contact controller failed. Can you see? I now have more information about why my contact controller failed. And it says picture. You know, I told you about picture that I don't think we have picture in our objects. So I'm just going to comment out picture, okay? Because picture does not exist by default in our objects, okay? So now that I have commented out picture, I'll take all instances of picture. Actually, instead of me commenting it out, why not create it? Why not create it quickly in the objects? Is it not much better? Go to contact and create pictures, okay? Picture URL. I can just call it test. Okay. 100. Next. Next. Save. Okay, so let's try to deploy again. It's failing again. Let me check the trace, okay? Go to terminal. It's saying picture. So let's go to picture again. I think we have picture in the contact object, right? Picture. Picture is there. Okay, it shouldn't be failing, but contact, picture, and maybe it's not syncing properly, but it should be automatically sync. It's not something that it has to. This is, let's retrieve the object again. Okay, let's go to objects, retrieve objects. Go to package.xml, objects. I'm not interested in custom objects. Retrieve. But it shouldn't fail though. It's just something that's probably just out of sync or something like that. Or where did I create it? Okay, I created it in QA. Let me just close QA so I don't make that mistake again. I need to create it in training, okay? And always, like anytime you see something fail, just know that it is most likely maybe you've made a mistake or you are just out of sync or something like that. Salesforce is built in such a way that mistakes are likely to be your fault. And it's just about you not being careful enough to observe the changes you've made, okay? So let's try this again. Contact, deploy. Okay, it's run successfully, which is good. Then let's go to get all contacts. So let me explain this. Now, I'm saying import Lightning element from LWC. You already saw that. You saw that in the previous example, our Hello World example and the likes. You extend Lightning element. So Lightning element can let you use some Lightning things, okay? Now that you've imported that, you're importing get contact list. Where can you find get contact list? Get contact list is in Apex controller. Apex controller, which is your class, right? So Apex class, it has the contact controller, and you are retrieving the method get contact list. So what does that tell you? What does it tell us? It tells us that if we want to import other methods, all we need to do is look for the name of that method, find contacts, and get single contacts, and update contacts. You can also use update contacts, right? So we can retrieve all the methods we have written in our controller. We can retrieve it and we can use it, okay? So let's see how the get contacts list work. Undo load. What is load? Undo load is just a function that we need to call. After we click on undo load or whatever instance that the function will load, it will get contact list. It will call that get contact list method. And what is that get contact list method? Get contact list will return all the contacts in the system. Okay? Now, .then, you already know it in JavaScript. .then is like a promise, right? It's going to retrieve the contacts. And what do you want to do with the results. You pass in the contacts equals to the results, because .then will give you a promise, and the promise is the result. Sometimes you can have even error like this, but you don't want to do that. You just want to use results, which is fine. This .error would be undefined, meaning that we have a result. Then this .error should be undefined. However, if there is an error, then .then comes with .catch. It's like try and catch. .catch, error, meaning that there is an error. This .error is now the error, while this .contact is undefined. We are done with the JavaScript. Now, how do we display the value of get contact? Go back to your recipe and go to the HTML version of that recipe you're using. Let's copy everything here. And we go back to our HTML of get all contacts and we paste it there. So let me tell you, what we're doing is we have a button called load contacts. And on click, like I told you earlier, on change, we'll be looking for the change event. On mouse over, we'll be looking for on mouse over event. On click, we'll be looking for on click of the button. And guess what? We have the JavaScript function to register the undo load, which is what is being loaded whenever the button is clicked. Undo load, okay? What does undo load, what does it get us? It gets us get contact list, and everything inside the undo load is being executed. I told you that if true, contacts, okay? This contact, if it is true, that means if there's data inside, then loop through the data for each contact, for item contact. That means one contact in contacts, display the results. If true, error, meaning that this contact is not true. It's only error that has message. Remember, this error is error. So you're just saying if true. Remember, there's a difference between undefined and true. If true, meaning that there's data inside. If undefined, meaning that it's undefined, okay? Then loop through the error. But you don't want to put this. I'll show you what this means maybe tomorrow. But this essentially is what they call the child component. So if you don't have a child component present, you cannot be using it. I'll show you what that means tomorrow or maybe in the next class. Okay? So I have literally just created a button. And if the button is clicked, it's going to give me contacts or it's going to display error. Okay? So what we can do is I can uncomment this, but comment this and say we have an error, right? Which is much like simpler. I will deploy my HTML. Okay? Get contact. Remember, for us to display this in our record page, app page, or whatever, we need to go to our recipe and go to the meta for this stuff, which shows that I want to deploy it in app page, record page, home page. Okay? So I'll just copy it and I will change it to this. Okay? Now, if I deploy this again, I'll be able to see the components in my app page, record page, or whatever page I have stated here. Let's go back to our training org and go to refresh, go to contacts, okay? Go to what do we say? App page, record page, home page. Okay, so we can put it on home, edit page, get all contacts. Okay, we drag get all contacts here and we save. So now, according to our JavaScript, don't mind this. This is just a title, right? Instead of imperative method, you can just say get all contacts. Tomorrow, I'm going to teach you the, maybe Monday, I'm going to teach you the imperative method, the tracking, the API and the likes. But for now, let's get a concept. Okay, get all contacts. Now, if you click on load contacts, you're expected to get all the contacts in the system. Okay, so as you can see, load contacts does not give us anything, which is fair. Let's see what's in the object. Okay, success, error, nothing, right? Let's try to create a contact. Let's just create a dummy contact, okay? So let's go back to the home. And let's try to refresh this and load contacts. Again, it's not showing, but what we can do is we can find out what happens with results. Console.log results. Okay, so you can also say console.log I am in undo load. Okay, that's the way you can see where you are and you can react based on where you are. Okay, so for instance, this is results. It tells me that I have successfully triggered this undo load. Okay, going to my undo load on click, which is what I'm expecting. If true, contact and the likes. We have an error, which is fine. Okay, so let's refresh the page again and see. Remember, we have with security enforced. Okay, go to your developer console and see where you are. Okay, let's click on it again. So again, it's not giving us a response. That means it's not even getting to our controller. Okay, I am in undo load. This is results. Okay, that means result is null. This is results. What is this result? So it has to be results.data. Okay, let's just say .data. Okay, deploy. And let's see the data from the results, okay? Because it's like result doesn't give you anything, but then result doesn't give you anything, right? So refresh again. And let's see what is in our results. It's undefined. Okay, result.data is undefined, but result is not even coming up. Refresh. Remember, that's the only way. The result is not coming up. What I can do is go to my developer console. Where's my developer console? And I can even track it from there as well, right? This is how you debug, just to find out what's going on with your code. Okay, I have my logs, which I'm going to be tracking. I have my developer console, which I'm going to be tracking. And I have this, which obviously is getting me what I need. But again, I'm worried that this is not coming out, but let's try again. Okay. Refresh this. and go to Developer Console. You see this, you open it up, and it says queries, which is fine. So if you look at it, say row return is 0. Okay? Why is it not coming up? If you look at your controller, you put a clause that says where picture is not null. As far as I can remember, I don't have any records in the system where picture is not null. So what I can do is edit the picture and find out a URL of the web or anything, okay? You can just find any image online and stuff like that, right? And look for a URL for that image, okay? Okay, this is getting, I don't want to make it complex. I don't need to be going to Facebook. I'll just put anything here just to, let us have data, because the query says where picture is not null. So if picture is null, it's not going to return anything. Load contacts, as you can see, it is now loading contacts. How was I able to debug? I went to my logs to find out why my query was not returning any data, right? Then I realized that I have put a clause in my query, but right now, my query is returning at least one data, and I can see that the data is being loaded here, okay? So if you create another contact in the system, you'll be able to display that contact. Okay, if you go to Home and you click on Load Contacts, again, you need to make sure that picture is not null for that contact, okay? Okay, the contact will come up. So now you've seen how to, one, communicate with contact controller, with the backend. You've seen how to share the records. You've seen how to make sure that this is enabled for LWC. And you've seen how to get records from the database. Now, you've seen how to use JavaScript to retrieve your method, because it is present in the Apex. You've seen how to undo your response based on a button click, how to initiate that method you've just retrieved. You retrieve it, you initiate it from a simple button click of JavaScript. And you've seen how to put a condition for displaying that record if the record exists or if there's an error in the record. This is LWC. This is what some people put on their CV and they're getting jobs. Every code you need for an entry-level job in LWC, you can go to LWC recipe and study all the classes and their example. Study the account controller, simple query that returns accounts. Study the Apex types controller, simple Apex type query. We're using a wrapper. Study all this query and see how you can use it in your Lightning web components. See how it is being done. And you should be able to say, at least I know how to move things around using Lightning. Lightning web component was created 2018. We are in 2022, first period of 2022. It was created towards the end of 2018. So you cannot find someone that has 5 years experience in Lightning web components. Max 3 years. Okay? Max 3 years, meaning that you are in a good shape to start Lightning web component today and become indispensable in the workforce just within 1 year of practice. I cannot teach you all this stuff. These stuffs are what you already know. I don't even do this stuff on a daily basis. I design solution. So these stuffs are the things that you already know in your JavaScript. The only difference is how to convert your knowledge of JavaScript into Salesforce JavaScript. And what is Salesforce JavaScript? The same JavaScript you already know, just extending the Lightning elements. So as you can see, the JavaScript you learned is important, is a prerequisite for your Lightning Web Component. But if you're smart enough, you don't necessarily need to be a guru in JavaScript before you can design or use Lightning Web Components. Okay? Tomorrow, we're going to continue with some of the important aspects, like finding a particular contact, getting a single contact, updating a contact, as well as understanding the type of binding, such as the example that is being given here, imperative. What is imperative and the likes? Okay? What is Apex imperative? What is Apex wire? You're going to learn that on Monday. Tomorrow, I want you to have a tutorial. So your tutorial tomorrow will cover the Visual Force page, as well as maybe on Friday, you can have the Lightning Web Component introduction as a tutorial. So you have 2 days to practice everything you've learned. So please try your best to just go here and just study the code. You don't need to do anything. Just put the code the same way I've done it and try to understand it. That's the beginning of your learning. Okay? I'm going to stop here to find out if you guys have any questions based on what we've said or we've taught today. I know we've done a lot. However, remember, everything we've done is still very basic. I've taught you before how to do the sandbox, how to move things. So the only thing you need to do is, if you need access to a sandbox, let me know so I can, maybe you guys can work as a team and just deploy things from one sandbox to the other. And it will aid your understanding. Okay? We're still going to have a project on that, but I want you to spend some time by yourself. It's only a selected number of people that will be able to go further in June. I don't want to overwhelm you guys. You guys have been learning since January. Okay? I don't want to keep pushing you guys. I want you guys to actually start looking for jobs. So in June, I'm only going to be particularly interested in those that met with me, that did really well with their one-on-one session and would like to continue, because there's still a lot you can learn. I literally want to, give you guys everything I have. And I want to just resign from development. I literally want to resign from development this year. So for me to resign from development, I need to give it to you guys so you guys can now learn and go teach someone else. Okay? We still have API integration for those that are still interested in learning. We still have Experience Cloud. 1 or 2 things in Experience Cloud are very useful for your development, but it's a bit advanced. I don't want to teach you advanced stuff. I want to teach you the things that you can easily get, because advanced stuff will require me to be Googling and getting the syntax, and as well as getting the requirement and showing you. But if you see me doing that, you might probably think, oh, you're meant to be teaching, but teaching requires you to get Salesforce code, Salesforce syntax, and be using it, okay? So I don't want to overwhelm you with those stuff. However, selected number of people will be given those projects to go work on, and based on their performance, then we can start giving them contracts, giving them jobs. But if you don't show me that you're interested in moving forward as a developer, I wouldn't need to overwhelm you with that. What you know right now is good enough for you to get an entry-level job developer. So please try your best to watch the videos, try your best to practice, and try your best to attend classes. It will help you. I'm going to stop here. If you have any questions, please raise your hand so I can quickly address them before we end the class for tonight. Do you guys have any questions before we end the class for tonight? You guys know what you're doing? You guys know what I'm teaching? And you guys know the connection between the Lightning Web Components, and your Salesforce org. And you can retrieve all those files if you want to. That's the understanding from this session. So if that's the case, then please, that's the end for me for tonight. There will be no class tomorrow, but you have tutorials. I'll ask Samuel, Tony, or anyone that is available to teach you tutorials. And on Friday as well, you have the opportunity to have tutorials if you want to. On Monday, we're going to have a continuation of the Lightning Web Components, and that will be my last class for you guys, okay? So officially, last class will be on Monday. And what are we going to learn on Monday? Just to improve on what we've just learned today. Try to see how to use table. Try to see how to load data and present it properly in a table. After that, I'll give you your final project, which you don't necessarily have to submit. However, if you submit it, it shows that you're willing to go further with developer, and I will be maybe pushing you forward to some of my clients. I'll probably be trying to get you a paid gig, okay? So the last project I'm going to give to you, you don't have to do it. However, if you do it, then it shows that you are interested in getting a paid contract with me or with some of the jobs I have, like clients and stuff like that. Even if it's just side gigs, then you are interested, okay? So please have that at the back of your mind that Monday is our last class. However, we can still have one or two for those that are truly interested in advancing their developers training, okay? It's not mandatory what we have after Monday, but knowing that Monday is going to be our last class gives you that liberty to not come for classes, okay? And again, because of that reason, we are not having the certification prep like we should do, because not everyone can continue in this. I understand that. But those that show interest would have a certification prep with me, whereby I can train them to pass their platform developer exams, okay? But again, you need to show interest. I wouldn't just keep fueling you guys with stuff unless I see the interest, okay? By next month is when I'm going to start seeing the interest. And based on that feedback, I'll be able to say, okay, you guys are due for platform developer, but I wouldn't give you guys platform developer certification without evidence that you are a developer, okay? I think that's all from me. Take care, guys. All the best. I'll see you next week. Have a good rest of the week. And please try as much as possible to learn independently. That's the only way you can grow. Bye for now. Take care. Bye, everyone.